I'm sitting in for our Mideast region, Don Nab, who is off doing some important outreach tonight. So here I am for you. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what's in the night sky for July. But before we do that, I just want to point out again, we have some wonderful League resources on our League webpage. It's astroleague.org. Then when you scroll down to the bottom, you get to the Navigating the Night Sky resources under Night Sky Tools. And if you go to taking your first steps, then if you're one of the many people I talk to during the month who are kind of new to astronomy but want to know more, this is a fantastic 8-pager that just talks through some basics. And if you're an old hand at this, this is a great reference to download and have in your hip pocket for those who are just getting started that you might meet in an outreach event. Mostly because it's very concise and it's very plain language and really helps you understand the information. But there is an awful lot of information to be had on the night sky guides section. As you can see, if you keep scrolling down, you have by category all kinds of things that are of interest. But what we're going to get to real quick is what's of interest for July of 2026, in particular for the Northern Hemisphere. And I'll explain that in just a moment too. These guides are typically available in English and in Spanish. So they're usually presented in two pieces, an upper portion and a lower portion. And the lower portion has a section in numbers that is basically naked sky objects. And then your pair of binoculars is really your best first tool for observing the night sky. So there's also a section in letters that gets into what you can see with a good pair of binoculars. But first of all, for the naked eye, I'll just point out that when you find the Big Dipper, which is not a constellation, the constellation it's in is Ursa Major. You use the outer two pointer stars of the Dipper and they get you to the North Star. And the North Star is not the brightest in the night sky, but rather more like the center of the celestial clock. But our clock in the sky runs backwards. It goes counterclockwise as the night goes on, or more appropriately, as the Earth rotates. So the first thing that we want to know about is after you've found your North Star, there's a little way that you can remember how to star hop to your first couple of constellations. And we've referred to that as an arc of the handle of the Big Dipper to Arcturus, which is the brightest star in the night sky in summer, and then speed on to Spica. And Spica is the bright star that is in Virgo. So when you're able to do that and find Arcturus and Spica, you have found the two stars of the three that make up something called the spring triangle. And again, this is an asterism, not an official IAU one of the 88 constellations, but it's a great formation, easily found even in light polluted skies. From there, we're going to go from Arcturus and hop across the sky to a bright star, the next bright star that you see, which is Vega. So in the night sky, you'll see you've got Vega, and Vega makes up the next thing that you can find for an asterism, and that is the summer triangle. So you go across the sky to Vega. The next bright star you see is Deneb. And then going down a little bit, you're going to find Altair in the Eagle. It's the bright star there. But even under light polluted skies, they are three stars you are likely to see, making up the summer triangle. So star hopping to Vega, that's a very important star for finding the little tiny constellation Lyra. And this is a great one to find if you're doing outreach, but a great one to also ask people for you to find if you're going to an outreach program, because there's a gem there. So this is the constellation Lyra, And within Lyra, you see that there is a marking here for the Ring Nebula. And here's a picture I took some time ago of the Ring Nebula. And it's a wonderful object, also known as M57, from Charles Messier's list of 100 objects that aren't comets. Yes, there is a list for that. There are 110 wonderful objects in the sky for amateurs to find. This is a foretelling of what our star, the sun, will be doing when it gets to end of life. But don't worry, that'll be another 4.5 billion years or so. What happens is our star will expand out to be a red giant about as far out as the place where you find Jupiter now. And as it runs out of energy, it'll collapse down into a dense white dwarf. Very tiny little star in the center of the Ring Nebula is the white dwarf. And the extra gases and stuff will just blow out around it and form a beautiful ring like we see in Lyra, which is about 2,000 light years away. So that light that's coming to us today actually started coming to us 2,000 years ago. Welcome to our time machine, right? So let's go back to Arcturus for a second. And it is in the constellation Boötes. Lots of people pronounce that lots of ways, but think of it as just the herdsman. I think of it as the ice cream cone. A lot of people call it the kite, but there are so many cool kite designs that I find that kids really tend to remember this one if you point out the ice cream cone with the bright star in the bottom where the ice cream drips out and the scoop on top. Now, that's an important one because it's next to a dimmer constellation, Corona Borealis, which is the Northern Crown. And we're all waiting for this little star, 10th magnitude star in Corona Borealis to finally go nova, not supernova, but nova. It's paired with another star that actually, it's called the Blaze Star, but there's two stars and one is pulling off material from the other. And then just like us at Thanksgiving dinner, it gets extra full and lets out a belch. That belch is a several-day nova that flashes up to about a magnitude 2. Now, remember, I told you that Polaris was about a magnitude 2 star, not the brightest star in the sky, but it was our central clock star. That's about how bright a star it's going to be. So if you're able to go to away from city lights and look for your ice cream cone and then the crown, which is a backward C, and look in this area when all the news reports start to tell us that this finally happens, which it's supposed to happen about every 80 years, you'll know right where to look for that nova that flares up. Also, as you're going across the sky from Arcturus through the Crown to Vega, partway there in Hercules, there is this area of Hercules known as the Keystone. And in that keystone is this great globular cluster M13. Again, Charles Messier's list of not comets. This is a picture I took of M13, that globular cluster, which is an ancient grouping of stars. It's old enough that gravitationally they're bound together, but they've also cleared out all of the dust and debris around them so that they're very pristine. I liken this to my bouquet of diamonds in the sky, and a lot of the moms at Outreach that I see, once they see it, they agree. So also some things to find with binoculars are the Coma Berenices star cluster, which you'll find from between the end of the handle of the Big Dipper to that star in the spring triangle known as Denebola, and also the coat hanger cluster. So if you look in the summer triangle, you'll find that it's about halfway between Altair and Vega. And remember, these three stars are pretty much the brightest ones in the area and therefore easily picked out. You put binoculars or a telescope on that and you're not going to forget this one because it's a beautiful combination of blue and gold stars. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I also want to point out that in the star chart for July, that they are telling us, that John Goss is telling us, that between the area of Antares and Altair, that there's an awful lot of star clusters and nebula, and for good reason. Antares is the bright red star that's in Scorpius, which comes up the horizon for summertime in the northern hemisphere. And you can see a great big piece of Milky Way here, and that's visible from a very dark sky area. And Altair is the next bright star up that Milky Way in that direction. Well, if you're able to see Scorpius, then you're also going to be able to see Sagittarius. But the thing that's probably most striking is the asterism that looks like a teapot. And I love this asterism because it's so unique. The spout of the teapot is actually telling us that the tea's on, because that steam and water vapor is trailing up. It's actually spilling over the stovetop. But more importantly, if you can remember where this is through whatever allegory or metaphor suits you, know that the center of our galaxy is between this tail of Scorpius and the spout of the teapot. And then if you are in light polluted skies and you're able to make out perhaps the teapot, but most certainly able to make out the summer triangle, which is further up, know that Aquila the eagle and Cygnus the swan, which is out of screen here, are always flying the length of the current of the stream of the Milky Way. So at least you'll be able to find where it is so that when you go to a dark sky area, it won't be foreign to you. There is a southern hemisphere chart that's now available as well. I won't go into detail on this one. And I do want to point out that every month there is usually at least one, probably several different viewing objects that are in a handout of one pager that's very succinct. And this month we have, as part of our Open Clusters Observing Club, M6 and M7. We talked a lot about the center of the Milky Way, and M6 and M7 as open clusters are off the tail of Scorpius. I wanted to say one more thing too about the center of our Milky Way. The reason that there are so many globular clusters there is because they are basically rotating around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And when I learned that, it was pretty interesting to me. So if you put your scope or your binoculars towards this area of the sky and float around, you're going to find some cool things, and maybe you'll even find M6 and M7. So a couple other things are happening this month, and that is that you've got some conjunctions. Some of you may have seen this past month when Venus and Jupiter were getting close together in the sky, pretty close to where Castor and Pollux were for Gemini. Well, the next conjunction will be on the 16th of July, which is Saturn, Pluto, and the moon lining up. Of course, Pluto will require a telescope, and Pluto is still a dwarf planet. So may have been demoted, but it's still one part of the 1.5 million or so dwarf planets out there. I did go to Lowell, I have to say that. That's the home of Pluto. July 20th, M15 or M45 rather, and the Pleiades will be in conjunction with the moon. And on July 28th, Mars and the moon. So look for those. And our moon phases for the month, just know that when you're in third quarter, that your moon will rise and set late. So if you're looking for darker sky to set up, you want third quarter. If you want to see your moon, you're going to want perhaps full moon, or first quarter when it rises and sets early. There's a couple little games you can play with family members or with yourself, and these are in part of our lunar programs. See if you can find, with the dark shapes on the face of the moon, some of the objects that you can kind of make out. I always knew about the rabbit on the moon, which is after the moon is pretty much setting for the evening. It's the man on the moon, basically, but turned a little bit. If you watch it go across the sky, it'll turn. It took me a while to see, and now I can't unsee it. is the shapes that are made out to be the woman in the moon, and that is definitely part of our lunar program. But phases are more important for observing different features on the moon. That's a whole nother set of library of books to talk about. So I just have 2 examples to show you why they're important. With a 4-day-old moon, the crater atlas, which is located here, you can make out the shapes of the crater rims like so. Whereas if you have a full moon, it's going to illuminate everything and you'll lose that directional lighting that will give you the definition. Some of the other things that you can find for lunar features are found here on this wonderful handout that's also on our website. With a telescope, you can make out the maiden of the moon, and it shows you here the neck, the head, and the hair. And the interesting thing there is that she's laying on her side, so it takes a minute to find it. But once you see it, it's another one of those you can't unsee it. So that's pretty cool. So our planets for the month, Mercury and Jupiter will appear in the evening sky early in the month. Venus, you can see all month in the early evening, setting earlier each night. Saturn and Neptune, for which Neptune you need a telescope, they'll be rising earlier each evening. Uranus and Mars will rise after midnight, and Uranus requires a telescope. And I love this handout from the League. It talks about how there's always a planetary lineup taking place. Always, literally. Because from Earth, you're looking out at the disk of our solar system objects going around the sun, and they're always rising and setting against the ecliptic in the sky, which is this line here, this orange line. So you know that the sun and the moon rise in the east and set in the west. Well, so do all the planets, because those planets are always on parade in the sky. So now you know more than your local news source. And that's your July sky. And here are just some of the observing programs that I've enjoyed.